Okay, so we've all heard about the new Oppenheimer movie, right? You know, the Manhattan Project, nuclear bombs, World War II, blah, blah, blah. But have you heard of the queen of nuclear research, the woman who actually carried out the experiments behind nuclear weaponry? Probably not, but she's pretty cool, so sit back, relax, and listen to the story of a fascinating lady. Let's start from the very beginning. In 1912, a little girl was born in Liuhe, a small town near Shanghai. Her mother was a teacher and her father was an engineer, both intellectuals, thus it was only natural that their daughter was Chen Changbu, future physicist extraordinaire, who was always besties with her dad, and he encouraged her to pursue a higher education and a career in science, her passion. There were two major problems here, though. Number one, she lived in a small town, so obtaining a high-quality education would mean traveling far away from everything she knew. And number two, she was a woman. Well, how else do you deal with these things, if not head-on? We charged forward, first moving over 80 kilometers away to a girls' boarding school, and then another move to attend the Nanjing National University, and then the prestigious Zhejiang University. After graduating, you would think that we would finally move back home, or at least find a place to settle down, but nope. Instead, she decided that she, a 24-year-old, would move halfway across the world to America. Keep in mind that it is currently 1936, so World War II is right around the corner. Because of this, Wu lost all contact with her family, and spoiler alert, despite her family thankfully surviving the war, the communist rule implemented in 1949 in China meant that she never saw them again. If that didn't make things bad enough, the only reports she heard of her hometown were bad news. So this young adult is on the other side of the world in a country where anti-Asian sentiment is growing, left to assume the worst about the people she loves, and is trying to survive in a male-dominated field. Sounds fun, right? Well, despite all these setbacks, Wu quickly made it clear that she was no amateur when it came to nuclear physics. Berkeley, a university campus in California, had just introduced a new particle accelerator, making it the epicenter of atomic research. Even though she had only been in town for a few days, Wu managed to impress the pioneering nuclear physicist Ernest Lawrence, who ran the experiments, as well as her future husband Luke Yuan. So now she was in Berkeley studying with Lawrence, Yuan, and the big dude himself, Oppenheimer. Despite her outstanding qualifications, things still weren't easy for her, and her race and sex made it difficult to find a good academic position. Well, it's pretty clear that Wu was meant for greater things, so she moved on to Princeton University on the East Coast, and this is where things get really interesting. At Princeton, Wu could continue her studies and experiments before eventually being recruited into the Manhattan Project. You would think that helping to design one of the most destructive weapons in history would be the peak of her career, right? Well, think again. We moved on to Columbia University, where she would spend the rest of her career. Now let's get into what it was that made Wu a truly legendary scientist. Drum roll, please. The Wu experiment. The purpose of the Wu experiment was to determine whether the law of conservation of parity would last when applied to low levels of nuclear force. Now, this may sound like complicated science gibberish at first, but fear not, it will be explained. Imagine a hypothetical world. Then imagine a hypothetical duplicate of this world, in which everything would be directionally flipped, so left and right would be switched. In scientific terms, everything would be flipped along the y-axis. Parity is the theory that everything else in the y-axis mirrored world, like forces, interactions, etc., would be the same. For example, if you look at these two clocks, the left set of 2 is a demonstration of p-symmetry. As you can all see, the numbers are flipped in the second diagram, and more importantly, so is the direction of the hand. This demonstrates conservation of parity. The one to the right would show p-asymmetry. The clock hand doesn't switch directions. This violated the law of conservation of parity, or p-conservation. In 1956, Wu's colleagues Sun Dao Li and Chen Ningyan presented the theory to her that this law of p-conservation was not evident in beta decay, a type of nuclear decay. Beta decay makes atoms stabilize themselves as a direct cause and effect of weak force, one of the 4 fundamental nuclear interactions. They asked Wu for her help to develop and execute an experiment that could prove their theory. Their hypothesis was something like when influenced by weak force, such as a situation like beta decay, parity is not conserved. Wu's experiment proved that p-conservation was violated by weak nuclear interactions, which became known as p-violation. But what's the point? Why does it matter? Well, this provided a way to concretely define left and right. For example, you can only tell left and right from your own point of view. They're different when you're facing the opposite direction, so it's dependent on perspective. This experiment allowed them to define left from right without relying on perspective. This was a pretty crazy discovery, as the physics community regarded parity as a given constant, so in summary, Wu contradicted a fundamental law of physics. Wu's findings left a lasting impression on the scientific community, although they were always attributed to her male colleagues, Sun Dao Li and Chen Ningyan, both receiving a Nobel Prize in Physics in 1957, while for a large period of time Wu's contributions were left anonymous. Reminder, this experiment and its discoveries are referred to as the Wu experiment, so there ain't no denying that Wu was the MVP of this research. And she didn't stop there. This girl boss also wrote a legendary reference for nuclear physics, and in her career she received over 15 major awards and honorary degrees, not to mention all of her memberships in prominent scientific societies. After retirement, Wu kept up her role as an inspirational figure by conducting educational programs that focused on encouraging young women across America and China to seek careers in STEM, and she would tell the story of her struggles that she faced while on her long journey to success. Once finally returning to China, Wu didn't hesitate to venture out of the world of science. She became a vocal critic of the Chinese government and campaigned for gender equality in the workplace and against the repressions and reprisals in China at the time. The remarkable life of a remarkable lady came to an end in 1997 when she was 84. Even after her death, Wu remained consistent with her appreciation for education as her ashes were spread in her parents' schoolyard. While this may have been the end of her life, Wu lives on with her scientific and social legacy as an influence to us all.